So today we are going to, well, actually today we've already been talking about satire for a while because we've already been in class for about an hour at least. So the first thing we did today was talk about our learning target, which is I can identify and analyze the argument in a satirical text. It didn't make sense to all of us, so we broke it down to identify, analyze, and satirical, and we looked at the different definitions, and then we wrote it in our own words, which is I can find out and closely study the argument in a reading that contains satire. After we did that, we popcorned some ideas of what we thought satire might be, and then we read an article by The Onion, and we watched part of an episode of the Colbert Report, and we came up with our own definition of satire, which is a way of using humor to show that someone or something is silly, idiotic, weak, bad, etc., etc. We came up with some other examples. The Daily Show was one of them. And then we looked at the dictionary definition, a literary work holding up human vices and follies to ridicule or scorn, and trenchant wit, irony, or sarcasm used to expose and discredit vice or folly. So, are we all, thumbs up or thumbs down, comfortable with the learning target and with what satire is? Thumbs up? Okay, you move it. So today we're going to talk about annotating text in a modest proposal. Annotating text is essentially writing on what we're reading. It's the opposite of what we've been told to do since we had our own books. Don't write on them with crayons, don't write on them with anything. In this particular reading, I want you to write all over it. The definition is a note of explanation or comment added to a text or diagram, and really it's a way of taking notes on a text. Why do we do it? Annotating text helps us to understand and interact with what we're reading. When you write something down by hand, it's a way of telling your brain it's important. So when you write something down on something that you're reading, even if it's just a check mark, it's a way to tell your brain, hey, this is important, hey, I need to go back to it, hey, I'm unsure what this means, or I might need it for later. What do I look for when I'm annotating? You want to look for passages or words that feel important. If you're reading a book, it could be a new character, it could be a new point in the plot, it could be a new place. If you're reading an academic article, it could be the main argument for thesis. You want to annotate passages or words that you don't understand, passages or words that you really like or don't like. And I like to annotate something that moves me in the reading or something I connect with personally, because I like to think of reading as a conversation between you and the text instead of just a one-way sort of thing. And when you connect with something personally, you remember it better. Ooh. Oh, back. How on earth do I annotate? So if you take a look at your handout, the second section, there are some symbols there. You do not have to use these, but you can. I especially like to use smiley faces and frowny faces when I really like or really don't like something. Since we're going to be reading about satire and irony, you could use an SI. You can also underline, highlight, circle, write notes. I know some people who like to color code what they read. I think you should do what works for you. If you find a way that you're comfortable annotating or writing on text, you're more likely to do it, and then it's more likely to be a skill that helps you in the future. What on earth are we annotating? We are annotating a modest proposal, which was written in 1729 by Jonathan Swift. One of the things it means by because it was written in 1729, it means that the language is going to be a little bit archaic, or it's going to be older. So try and remember back to 9th or 10th grade when you read some Shakespeare, probably Romeo and Juliet or some sonnets, and you had to get into sort of a different mindset to understand everything that was going on. This text is going to be a little bit like that. However, it's also footnoted. So if you take a look at the text that I handed out, you'll notice that on the bottom, there are some definitions that are already there for you. And that means that the person who put this version together sort of anticipated that we wouldn't understand everything because we're reading it so far into the future. So Swift was an Irishman who was educated in England and living in Dublin when he wrote A Modest Proposal. He was what's called a pamphleteer. So back then, of course, they didn't have radio or television ads for political campaigns. So instead, they hired people to write pamphlets, which is what Swift was doing when he wrote this. Politically, England had just ended another Irish rebellion. Irish rebellions at this point had been going on for hundreds of years and would continue to go on. During that time, between 20 and 40% of the Irish population died from war, starvation, or bubonic plague. and there were thousands of refugees trying to get out. This is a picture of a monument in Dublin to some of the family refugees. So I like to compare today, I don't like to, but to the Syrian refugee crisis. We know that there's a war going on. We know that there's a lot of terrible stuff happening, but we're also inundated with news. If you listen to NPR at any point during your day, if your parents watch the news in the morning or at night, you get bombarded with information. And at a certain point, your brain just sort of stops thinking about it. You stop digesting it because you know you can't do anything or because you don't care. And that's what was going on in England at the time, is people knew that things in Ireland were bad, but they'd heard so much about it that they didn't really care. And so that's who Jonathan Swift is writing for. So I'm going to read a section of this out loud to you. We're not going to read the whole thing because we don't have time. And afterwards, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to annotate it for yourself. I'm going to annotate a couple of examples. I realize now that this isn't really large enough for you to see, but I'm going to do it anyways. If you want to annotate while I'm reading out loud, that's fine, or you can wait until I'm done. What I'm going to ask you to annotate is I want you to mark at least one place where you think there's satirical language. I would like you to mark at least one instance where there is a word or a phrase that you don't understand. And I would like you to mark at least one place where there is a word, phrase, or sentence that seems especially meaningful or important. So are we all thumbs up, thumbs down, comfortable moving forward? All right, so there should be an arrow on your reading handout, which is at line 39. And you can follow along with me there as I read it loud, and I'm just going to make a couple notes. There we go. There only remain 120,000 children of poor parents annually born. The question, therefore, is how this number shall be reared and provided for, which, as I have already said, under the present situation of affairs, is utterly impossible by all the methods hitherto proposed. For we can neither employ them in handicraft or agriculture. We can neither build houses, in the country, nor cultivate land. They can very seldom pick up a livelihood by stealing till they arrive at 6 years old, except where they are of towardly parts, although I confess they learn the rudiments much earlier, during which time they can, however, probably be looked upon only as probationers. As I have been informed by a principled gentleman in the county of Cavan, who protested to me that he never knew above 1 or 2 instances under the age of 6, even in a part of the kingdom so renowned for its quickest proficiency in that art. I am assured by our merchants that a boy or a girl before 12 years old is no saleable commodity, and even when they come to this age, they will not yield above 3 pounds or 3 pounds and a half crown at most on the exchange, which cannot turn to account either to the parents or the kingdom, the charge of nutriments and rags having been at least 4 times that value. I shall now, therefore, humbly propose my own thoughts, which I hope will be not liable to the least objection. I'm going to switch to this one. I have been assured by a very knowing American of my acquaintance in London that a young, healthy child, well nursed, is, at a year old, a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled, and I make no doubt that it will equally serve in a fricassee or a ragout. I do therefore humbly offer it to public consideration that of the 120,000 children already computed, 20,000 may be reserved for breed, whereof only 1/4 part to be males, which is more than we allow to sheep, black cattle, or swine, and my reason is that these children are seldom the fruits of marriage, a circumstance not much regarded by our savages. Therefore, 1 male will be sufficient to serve 4 females. That the remaining 100,000 may, at a year old, be offered and saled to persons of quality and fortune through the kingdom, always advising the mother to let them suck plentifully in the last month, so as to render them plump, fat, and for a good table. A child will make 2 dishes at an entertainment for friends, and when the family dines alone, the fore hind quarter will make a reasonable dish, and seasoned with a little pepper or salt will be very good boiled on the 4th day, especially in winter. I have reckoned upon a medium that a child just born will weigh 12 pounds, and in a solar year, if tolerably nursed, increases to 28 pounds. I grant that this food will be somewhat dear, and therefore very proper for landlords, who, as they have already devoured most of the parents, seem to have the best title to the children. Infant's flesh will be in season throughout the year, but more plentiful in March and a little before and after, for we are told by a grave author, an eminent French physician, that fish being a prolific diet, there are more children born in Roman Catholic countries around 9 months after Lent. The markets will be more glutted than usual because of the number of popish infants is at least 3 to 1 in this kingdom, and therefore it will have one other collateral advantage by lessening the number of papists among us. I have already computed the charge of nursing a baker's child, in which I list reckon all cottagers, laborers, and 4/5 of farmers, to be about 2 shillings per annum, rags included, and I believe that no gentleman would repine to give 10 shillings for the carcass of a good fat child, for which I have said will make 4 dishes of excellent nutritive meat, when he hath only some particular friend or his own family to dine with him. Thus the squire will learn to be a good landlord and grow popular among his tenants. The mother will have 8 shillings neat profit, and be fit for work until she produces another child. Those who are more thrifty, as I confess the times require, may flea the carcass, the skin of which, artificially dressed, will make admirable gloves for ladies and summer boots for fine gentlemen. So, it's a little dense, which is why we're annotating it. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes, go through and mark what's on the board here. If you've already done that and you get done early, turn and talk to your neighbor, see what they wrote down, see if there was something you understood that maybe they didn't, or something they understood that maybe you didn't, and you can sort of help each other out, and then we'll come back and have a brief discussion. It was this way faster, yeah.
Meeting and important when it's
That's the fun part of satire, is you can be as ridiculous as you want. Yeah, you don't have to. If something else is more comfortable, that's fine. You can put a happy face on the whole thing if you want to. Luckily, we're not going to pass it around afterwards. That's totally understandable because it's about eating kids.
Oh, that's what it's about?
I like the way
Sorry, my
that he
bad.
gave some responsibility there.
Yeah.
Using satire.
Well, and one of the things, so ideally in the class, we would read the whole thing. We would not just read this part. This is just the most inflammatory part. But he does go on at the very end to say, here are all the things we could have done, or here are all the things we can't do, such as make sure to keep trade in the country and landlords being kinder, which are the actual solutions he's proposing. But yeah, there would be no John Stewart if there was no modest proposal. One way to think of it.
Still need a star.
So, have we all annotated a couple things? If you have annotated a couple, 2-3 things at least, will you give me a thumbs up? Okay, we'll wait another minute.
This is my single